Kentucky's workforce. With us here today, and as I call your name, you're more than welcome to enter the stage. Todd Baldwin is the Vice President and Director of the Center for Best Practice and Innovation with the Prichard Committee for Academic Excellence. Brian Friesman is the Superintendent for Fleming County Schools. Michael Hesketh is the Vice President and co-owner of Superb IPC. JP Kelly is the President and CEO of Triangle Enterprises, Paducah and McCracken County. Meredith Rosansky is the Executive Vice President of Operations, Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce. And last but not least, we have Delaney Stevens, who's the Director of Policy, Meaningful Diplomas with the Prichard Committee for Academic Excellence. Please help me welcome this esteemed panel to the stage.
Good afternoon. How is everyone? Excited for the last session of the day? Yeah? All right. Well, I promise we're going to try to make this as interactive and entertaining as possible, so thank you all for sticking with us today. We're really thrilled to be here. Thanks for joining us, and I want to give a hats off to the Chamber for hosting this Workforce Summit. And so again, we're really excited to be here, and here in a minute I'll introduce our esteemed guest on the stage with us. But first, I want to provide a little bit of context setting for our discussion today when we talk about building effective school business partnerships to strengthen Kentucky's workforce. The Prichard Committee works closely with employers across the state, and we're hearing firsthand how important these partnerships are, not just for the business community, for workforce development, but for also building student agency, for increasing the capacity of local communities and schools. And so we're excited to share with you today some insights from our 2024 Meaningful Diploma Employer Survey that we conducted just before the end of the year last year. And so we're going to walk through that. I'm going to give a really high-level overview of that because I want to spend more time talking with our panelists today, and then we're going to actually do a workshopping design sprint session on the back end to get you all talking together and start generating some ideas about how do we really measure effective partnerships, and then what are the strategies that really work to increase collaboration. So I want to spend just a few minutes talking about what we're hearing from employers across the state. But before I do that, I do want to make sure I recognize a few additional staff. So Dr. Todd Baldwin, he's our Director and VP of the Center for Best Practice and Innovation. Our Meaningful Diploma work sits within the center at Prichard. Lisa McKinney is in the back of the room. Kirsten LaChance is right there. And then our President and CEO, Bridget Long. And then Kyle Jones is over there. So we're excited to be here today. So I want to spend just a minute talking about some context to this conversation. And since the 1980s, Kentucky has made remarkable progress in improving education outcomes across the state. So we have moved from the bottom tier in most education rankings to the middle tier, and in some cases the top tier. So we've seen remarkable progress. For over 40 years, the Prichard Committee has been working hand in glove with local communities, with state policymakers to improve these education outcomes. And we firmly believe that it takes partnerships, it takes communities, it takes individual champions. We can't rely on schools to do this work alone. And so that's why we're here today to talk about the importance of these partnerships and the good news around what employers want to see when it comes to K-12 education, but also their willingness to partner. So to achieve this, we like to use the word groundswell. And so to improve these outcomes, to increase partnerships, to improve the quality of life in Kentucky, it takes a groundswell. And really what that means is we've got to have families and parents engaged, we've got to have community members engaged, we've got to have businesses engaged, and all of those things can really help spur student agency, student growth. And if we can do that, we're going to see improved outcomes when it comes to post-secondary attainment. We're going to see improved outcomes when it comes to workforce participation. We're going to see improved outcomes when it comes to quality of life in local communities. And so we firmly believe this is our theory of action, so to speak, around we firmly believe there's a path to a larger life that starts with education. And so by getting communities and other stakeholders involved and not just relying on education to do this, we can really move the needle on these outcomes. So today, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to review our survey findings, again, really high level. You have an opportunity, I think, in your handouts to scan a QR code that takes you to the full survey report. We've got some printouts over here that you can look at, so feel free to do that. And then there's some additional opportunities to review this data. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the survey findings so that we can get to our panel discussion and our workshopping session. So we're going to review the survey findings. We're going to have a chat with our panelists here about effective strategies, criteria, how are we building durable skills in students and in K-12 education. We're going to spend some time doing a workshop design sprint to talk about what are the criteria that we really need to be looking at in measuring effective partnerships, and then strategies that work. And then lastly, how do we build momentum to continue this work? So by the end of this, hopefully you're going to come away with a few things. We want to really highlight these innovative solutions that are happening in local communities to overcome common barriers to partnerships and communication. We want to highlight some sustainable communication channels, and we want you all to be able to walk away understanding not only the importance of durable skills development, but how do we embed and integrate those things into work-based learning opportunities, partnerships, things that we can really enable students, not just to have the academic proficiency, but also a really well-rounded set of competencies that prepares them for life after high school. And so to do that, we first have to really understand where we're at. As a state, in our local communities, we're really fortunate in Kentucky to have a really high school graduation rate. So 92.3% of students graduate high school every year in Kentucky. But when you look at post-secondary outcomes, post-secondary attainment, workforce participation, there's a pretty big disconnect. And additionally, when you look at some data around student readiness, what students are saying in terms of how they feel or not feel like they're prepared to transition from high school to post-secondary to the workforce, they're saying that they're not getting the skills that they need to be able to make informed decisions. And so we've got to really think about how do we close that gap and how do we create a seamless pipeline between education and career so that it's aligned, it's coherent, benefits students, it benefits schools, and it benefits the employer community as well. So we love data at Prichard Committee. Data can really help tell a really good story, or not so great of a story, depending on what data you're looking at. But in this case, the data tell a story, and this is part of why we're here today. It's part of why we launched an employer survey. Kentucky ranks 4th in the nation in high school graduation rate. But we're 46th in post-secondary enrollment, we're 44th in the number of residents with an associate degree or higher, and we're 46th in median household income. And so when you look at that and you couple that with our high graduation rate, there's obviously a disconnect there. And then I mentioned just a few minutes ago around student data. What are students telling us? And fewer than half of students are telling us that they're prepared to make informed decisions about their futures. And so that data really does tell a really compelling story. And digging in a little bit more, when you look at academic proficiency data, post-secondary outcomes and transitions, there's some other concerning data that we're looking at that really helps make the case for why a meaningful high school diploma matters. So in 2023-2024 school year, 35% of 10th graders were proficient or above in reading. In math, and 45% were proficient or above in math, in reading. 30% of graduates directly enrolled in the workforce after high school. So 30% of high school graduates directly enrolled in the workforce upon graduation. That number has ticked up slowly over time. So we've seen the number of students that have directly entered the workforce increase from about 20% in 2018 to around 30% according to last year's data. The college going rate in Kentucky has continued to decline as well. And so last year, about 53% of students enrolled directly in college after high school graduation. That number has dropped about 10% over the past 10 years. And then lastly, 35% of students, graduates, are pursuing work-school combinations after high school graduation. And so they're choosing, if they go to college, they're choosing not just to pursue academic studies, but they're also choosing to work, have part-time jobs. So we're seeing more and more students choose to work while they go to school after high school. And then workforce participation. Kentucky continues to trail most other states around us, and we continue to trail the national average in workforce participation. So we have about a 57% workforce participation rate. The national average, I think as of January, was around 63%. And so we continue to see Kentucky trail. So when you think about some of this data in terms of outcomes, proficiencies, what students are telling us, and how that correlates with quality of life, economic mobility, workforce participation, there's certainly a connection there. And so we got to figure out how do we help close those gaps. And that's partly why we launched this survey. Last thing I want to note too, about 1 in 7 Kentucky students, Kentucky young people aged 16 through 24 are disconnected from school and work. So we call it opportunity youth. That means they're not in school and they're not working. 1 in 7 are neither in school nor working. So to those ends, we wanted to really understand from employers, what are they saying about graduate preparedness? Employers consistently tell us that durable skills are the #1 factor in terms of assessing readiness, in terms of how we're evaluating workforce readiness, workforce outcomes, engagement when it comes to how employees are engaging in work. Durable skills are the thing that employers time and time again say, these things, we've got to make sure we're doing a better job of teaching our young people these skills. So you see communication, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, leadership. Perhaps my favorite is metacognition, so thinking about your thinking. I think that's an important one as well. You've got to be able to understand, that thought process. And so durable skills, that's the word we use. That's the term that's gaining a lot of traction, not just in Kentucky, but nationally. And so we'll continue to refer to durable skills throughout this presentation. So when you look at what factors employers rely on the most when assessing a recent high school graduate's readiness for employment, over 80% say durable skills is the #1 thing. They're also looking at references, they're looking at prior work experience and work-based learning opportunities. And they still value academic proficiency, they still value academic mastery. But they're telling us that durable skills is that one thing that we're missing the boat on. And so we've got to think about how we're integrating those things into the student experience. So in addition to academics, what experiences, we asked employers, what experiences, knowledge, skills should K-12 be focusing on that they're not necessarily focusing on now? They can help prepare students for life beyond high school. And we heard from them, not just through the survey, but through direct conversations and focus groups, that they're seeing a huge lack in professionalism and work ethic. They're seeing a lack in durable skills, competencies. They're seeing a lack in interpersonal skills. And so they want to see K-12 focus on these things a lot more. They want to see students be prepared in these areas, especially because more students are choosing to pursue work-based learning opportunities. They're choosing to pursue a work-school combination after high school. So employers are telling us every single day that they want these things to be embedded into those learning experiences. They also want to see things like increased financial literacy for students. Employers are saying that workers are coming unprepared when it comes to managing their checkbook or knowing how to do their payroll. And so they want to see schools focus on this. And we're seeing some traction in Kentucky with that, fortunately. So we're hearing a lot from employers. But when you think about it, all this boils down to how do we effectively apply real-world applications in student learning? And that's what employers are saying. They want to see more real-world applications of learning that can help develop these durable skills. And so we'll talk a little bit about that during our panel. So I'm not going to read this slide line for line, but I do want to highlight a couple of things here. We heard from over 80% of employers that said partnerships are crucial when it comes to talent pipeline development and workforce development. And what's very encouraging is employers are willing to engage. They're saying, yes, these partnerships are crucial. However, we're also seeing that the effectiveness of partnerships, of current partnerships, so employers that have said, yes, we are partnering, the effectiveness of those partnerships, there's a lot of room for growth in that area. And so employers have told us through the survey, they're telling us through some focus group conversations that we've got to do a better job of increasing the effectiveness of these partnerships. We've got to do a better job of increasing the communication channels so that it's not one-off communication, but it's really sustained, ongoing, meaningful collaboration between not just education, but also the business community. So there's some silver linings around that. When we talk about work-based learning, so internships, apprenticeships, we saw through our survey that about 21% of employers currently offer some form of work-based learning opportunities to students. However, over 50% expressed willingness to partner, to offer these experiences, and really get more engaged with schools, with students. So there's a gap between interest and action. So we're seeing a good number of employers wanting to partner and saying they value those partnerships, but not as many are actually partnering. In today's session, we're going to address some of that. And then just quickly talking a little bit about barriers. Employers express, and they noted quite a few different barriers when it comes to the successful implementation of workforce readiness programs. They cited a lack of available mentors and qualified instructors. A lot of them said that they don't know necessarily how to engage with students, so they need more help in that area. And then challenges in coordinating schedules. And so, how do we make sure that we're bridging that gap, we're breaking down those walls when it comes to that real-world application of learning, the work-based learning opportunities that we can provide students. The biggest takeaway from this, though, from the barriers and the strategies that employers want to see, is they want to see structured programs, they want to see structured policies. They value these partnerships, but they got to see the value add, and they want to see structure to it. So that it's meaningful for the business community, but also meaningful for students and meaningful for schools. So to that end, I'm going to take a seat here and try to do less talking and let you guys do some more talking. Okay? I'd like to introduce our panel today. Joining us is Brian Priestman, Superintendent of Fleming County Schools. Mike Heskett, CEO of Superb IPC with Shelby County. J.P. Kelly, CEO of Triangle Enterprises from Paducah and McCracken County. And Meredith Lozansky, Executive VP at the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce. So please help me welcome our panelists. And really thankful for you all to be here with us today. You all are doing a lot of innovative work across the state and your local communities around bridging that gap between, schools, the business community, and, talk with each of you individually. And the importance of these partnerships is something that really we've got to make sure we're doing a better job, effectively communicate not just the importance of those partnerships, but how do we make them work? How do we make them sustainable? What are the communication channels that need to be opened up? And so I'm really excited for you all to join us today. And I'm going to start, Mike, with you. I'm going to put you on the spot first, if that's okay. So you've seen, in Shelby County, you've seen firsthand education evolve.
In Shelby County, in 2017, they invited the business community in, the entire community, parents and business community, and asked us what's important. And a lot of the exact same things that Delaney had on the chart that employers are looking for to make a good employee were the ones that came out of that session. and we formed it into what we call our profile of a graduate. Statewide, we have it as a portrait of a learner. It's 6 qualities: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, lifelong learner. Boy, is that more important than ever these days. So those were all identified, but how could we make those part of the assessment? And in our community, the students now have to not only focus on their academics, which is first and foremost, but they also have to defend that they are achieving the 6 things in our portrait of a learner. That they actually have to, at the different stages of 5th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade, they stand before a panel and they defend. They have to provide exhibits of what they've accomplished and prove that they are an effective collaborator, a critical thinker, etc. All of these things to become part of the real way that the entire way that we assess the effectiveness of our students. So they transition into graduation. The stats show that I think it's 55% do go to college, which is wonderful. It's closer to 40% actually graduate with a degree. So 60% of our kids graduate high school, but don't have a 4-year degree to help them to have the high level of skill and ability that warrants the income that we're all striving for. Our schools are now recognizing that we have to focus on the rest of the picture and assess that, and they've invited our community to participate. They trying to teach our teachers. We have pathways. They have a magazine that we have 18 to 20 different pathways that our students can enroll in. And what we're finding is it's parents half the time that really don't understand the pathway options. And so we're having kids explore, and we're drawing people in to participate and helping them to look at and pursue pathways.
Yeah, that's great, Mike, thank you. And I want to add too, when we talk about groundswell action and the importance of involving local community members in partnerships. You know, Mike, great example, Mike's a PC member for how many years now?
2 years.
2 years. So we have about 150 Prichard Committee members across the state, and they're working with us every single day in their local communities to drive these outcomes, improving these outcomes, working with businesses, working with schools. And so again, when we think about groundswell, we've got to have those champions, and each and every one of our panelists here today is certainly a champion in their communities. And I want to kind of add to that, Mike, and switch over to Brian. When we think about the portraits of the learner, the durable skills competencies, how are you all integrating those things into the student learning experience? And then additionally, with partnerships, how do you make sure that employers and your partnerships outside of the school building are really pushing that forward as well?
Yeah, so we started in 2018 right behind Shelby County, and we modeled a lot of our work around Shelby County. And one of the things that we did was we do durable skills from K to 12th grade. And in grades 3, 6, 8, and 12, students have to meet promotion requirements based on durable skills. And if you look across the board at the 171 school districts, we're doing pretty much the same durable skills. We may call it something different, but one of the things that's really powerful about these competencies is that we're getting a chance to really, students always ask, why are we doing this? And it's really in context. And with these business partnerships, it really helps us to say, this is why you need to learn how to communicate, not by cell phones, but face to face. And also be self-aware. I was looking at that. That's one of the things that really, that's missing with students right now across the board is self-awareness. And, if you think about it, us here, we've said, okay, what are we supposed to wear today? Students don't have that. They just come in, they just show up, and then there's other things too, but with these businesses, when they come into our schools, they really talk about, you can't come into a job site, work co-op with Crocs on, right? That's the thing, Crocs, right? It used to be flip-flops, now it's Crocs. We've upgraded a little bit. But also, it just helps us, to validate those durable skills with our partners in the communities. But when students are standing up there in grades 3, 6, 8, and 12, demonstrating or showcasing their durable skills at that grade level, it's really powerful. And then they start forming those connections that this is really important. But in grades 3 through 12, all students have to collect a portfolio in Fleming County. So just think about that third grader by the time he or she gets to being a senior. All that evidence that student's going to have. And we don't have big manila folders. It's all digital. So it's really going to be powerful that we can show our business partners, hey, this kid is ready for a co-op, or this kid is ready to enter the job force.
So one of the things that employers said is the difficulty sometimes in coordinating schedules between schools, the demands, the seat time requirement of schools, but then the work-based learning opportunities that students have, especially whenever they get into their junior and senior year. So JP, I'm wondering in Paducah how you all have approached that challenge or tried to solve that challenge in terms of scheduling or coordinating those schedules and allowing students to really get those real-world application learning, not just through core academics, but also the work-based learning experiences that you all provide.
Sure. So rule number one, you have to be flexible. Frankly, you have to be flexible with the workforce, period now, not just kids coming out of the hospital. But flexibility. So what we do is we have two distinct but similar programs. We have internships that are summertime, which is full-time. So we'll connect with the schools to say, hey, look, I have this full-time opportunity. It's 40 hours a week. We expect them to work 40 hours a week. So that's what we do during the summertime. In school, we understand they may have classes, may not be able to be at the office till 10:30, 10:30, 11, and we work with them and we understand that, and that's communicated through the program, not through the individual. So when we get these individuals, we already have that information, so it doesn't have that awkward of, hey, I can't be here until. That's all set up front, so we have a clear expectation.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned programs, and when I think about programs, also think about the role that intermediaries play. Intermediaries can be so crucial to bridging that gap, the divide between the capacity schools have or don't have, the capacity that employers may be struggling with in terms of scheduling and coordinating. Every single employer or every single school may not be able to have a dedicated person that can help coordinate those schedules, find internships for students. And fortunately, we've got someone here with us today that's done a lot of work around, serving as an intermediary. So Meredith, you're with the Chamber in Bowling Green. Can you talk about the evolution that you all have seen and the role the Chamber has played in connecting schools, multiple schools, and industries and businesses to make sure that students are getting those experiences?
We had the same conversation around our boardroom table over a decade ago that all of you are having of, these kids these days. And a lot of our businesses were like, well, who's gonna show up and fix this? And it's like, it's us. Like, we are responsible for getting the outcome that we wanna have, but we have to also understand the audience of whom we're getting our talent from. And so as a Chamber of Commerce, we hired Sandra Baker, a former high school educator, wrote and administered the largest Race to the Top grant. And so together we set out on what we thought was going to be a 12-month journey. 8 years later, here we are. But it was very much a listening session at first. Her and I went to every elementary school, every middle school, every high school in our county across both districts and listened to all the pain points, all the issues, all the sins of the past by everyone who has come before us. And then we went back to the business community and we're talking about all the masters that education is responsible for complying with. There's federal masters, there's state masters, there's site-based councils, there's school boards. There's a lot of people telling them what to do. And so what we decided was, how do we better form a partnership as a community? So we convened 50 educators and 50 business leaders for 6 months at the Chamber and had a conversation about who are all those masters, what are all the boxes you have to check for all the things, and how can we help you check them in a more meaningful way for everyone involved. And out of that came our strategic plan as a community for SCK Launch, which is South Central Kentucky learning about unique and new careers here. Because we wanted to change the mantra from go to college to go to career, so that when they show up at WKU and they show up at Sky CTC, they know why they're there and they complete. We wanted informed consumers because that's more than we have now. And so that's what we set out to do. We started with our profile of an ideal graduate back then. And the chamber really has served as that steady force because educators change, business leaders change. I swear after COVID, every business and every sector, every leader shifted like 2 states to the left. And so we're the ones that go out and go, this is what we do here, this is how we partner with education, you gotta get on board. And you've gotta have that person that's constantly beating that drum. Years ago, I had to go before the Bowling Green Independent School Board, and Gary Fields asked me to come speak to his board to get them, on board with our plan. And he said, he was like, I was a high school principal for 13 years, where the heck were you when I was principal? And he said, in that 13 years, he said, a lot of very well-intentioned people showed up with really great ideas and dumped them on our doorstep and left. Or they stayed engaged long enough for their child to get out of that school. He said, this is the first time somebody showed up with a really great idea and put as much, if not more work into it to make it great than we had to. And that's what you've got to be willing to do, it's that sustainable piece. Who's coming after you to make sure it persists?
Yeah, that's great, and you bring up a good point about sustainability. So, you see leadership changes that happens every single day. We see, whether from the business side or the education side, you see that turnover, you see people come and go. So, and I'm opening this up for anybody that wants to answer, but what are some of the structures, the frameworks that should really be considered and elevated to make sure that regardless of leadership changes or who's in a certain role, that those partnerships can withstand those changes?
I said, our mantra was make it easy. I love JA, so big moves from JA. But if you look at their book on like job shadowing, it's like this thick. No one's gonna read that in this day and age. And so for the tactics that we had in our plan for career shadowing, for educator externships, for our 8th grade experience event, everything's 5 pages. Here's your booklet if you're on the employer side, here's your booklet if you're on the educator side. These are the expectations, this is the draft agenda, this is how you engage with students, because don't think that just because you're a great business person that you translate well to children, particularly teenagers. And we help them through that. And then we have a member of our team that's there at every instance to make sure that it goes well for both sides. And over the years, we've had some that weren't great, and we don't invite them back next year.
I think, just listening to the group, at the end of the day, I think people like me, we're the consumer, right? I mean, you guys are training a workforce to get them to somebody like me to put to work. So what I would say is when I hear all these things, it's wonderful to hear this and know that that's out there. I think the success that we've been having is that our groups understand that they are, and I'm not to be insensitive, but they're selling me a product. And that product is the students, that product is the worker. And making that easy, consistent, to know that I'm getting qualified people, as long as I give them a good opportunity, they're going to excel. So that's how you make it sustainable. You keep the product at a level of excellence that meshes with the people who are providing the jobs. I was looking at the statistics. 100% of the people working for me have a job, right? 100% of them have a wage that is a livable wage. So I think understanding that, which we've done in Paducah and McCracken County, is very important, making it sustainable. And we're seeing that because of the work being done by the people in this room, I believe.
I would say, first of all, if you're not familiar with Bowling Green, what I've heard is it's on fire. So now I see why. That's fantastic. If you can help in that capacity, in Shelby County, going back about 4 years ago, we came together and we created a position that was called a workforce coordinator, because that we needed a ongoing position that worked between our businesses and our school to facilitate. It was primarily in the beginning just work-based learning, but it turned out to be so much more. Our school so saw such value that they've added a second person that's more internally focused, working with the students to help them to be ready for business, and the person who was originally hired to work directly in business services, we call it in some other areas, going out meeting our businesses and trying to solicit opportunities and engagement from them. And so that has been very helpful. It's made a huge difference. Our community is much more engaged through those two individuals who facilitated that. But boy, if you can get the Chamber of Commerce and a broader group involved, that's fantastic. That's the thing that we're kind of lacking. We haven't had the employer engagement at a broader level. It's one by one that we've achieved it. And while that's good, it's slow and it's limited. But if we could get a leadership in that kind of way, it would be fantastic.
And, we ask, in Fleming County, we're dealing with, big things here. Portrait of Learner, durable skills. We're also leading this local accountability work. And I'm constantly asking, if something happened to me, if I got in a car accident, God forbid, would this continue? But I think it all goes back to why. Why are we doing this? And the more that we can really explain why we're doing this and why, businesses are so important to this work, and getting them bought into trying to change this model, it doesn't rest on that one shoulder. Or it doesn't just rest on the business community to get this done. It's a team approach about this work. We have 600,000 students here in Kentucky right now. We have to get this right. And we can't pass the buck. We can't kick the can down the road with this. We've got to get this right. I mean, the data tells us that we've got to get this right. There's red flags popping up all over the place. If it's not us, who? But I will also tell you, I didn't know I was going to be on stage with Mike here, but one of the ways you keep this capacity going, you have a mic in your communities. I have a Jenny. Shelby has a mic, but they're involved in the work. Mike can probably tell you more, just about as much about Shelby County Schools as the superintendent, and I know the superintendent, and I know the former superintendent. But we've got to get that capacity in the community, just not resting in the school district, about why this work is so important right now. And we've got a booming economy. We've got to make sure kids can go into those jobs to keep this economy going. It's important. Reading, writing, and math's always going to be important, but this is really a once-in-a-generation moment that we've got to get right. So, I don't think we have a choice. So I think that's how we keep this sustained.
So I'm going to build on that a little bit, and Brian, I'll let you lead in with this, but again, feel free, anybody jump in. When we think about, we've got to get this right, we've got to make sure that we're communicating the value add to all these different stakeholders, and also how do we communicate why this matters for students, right? Like essentially it's about the student, it's about, the value add to them, that diploma signaling readiness, not just for them, but for post-secondary institutions, for the business community, right? And that all pushes on quality of life, community well-being, economic mobility. And so I'm curious, when we think about communicating the value and the impacts of partnerships, what kind of impacts have you seen in Fleming County through those partnerships, and how do you communicate those to parents and families, to the business community? How do you communicate that to students?
Yeah, so every day, if you come into any Fleming County school, we've got 5 schools. You're going to see a business partner in one of them, maybe 2. We have 9 student enterprises at our high school. They're self-contained. They operate just like a business would out on Broadway here. We partnered with our local businesses to be in there to train train the students. So it really builds that, this is important. And really the impact, we have students who are entering the workforce very, a seamless transition there. But we also have students, we tell people we're training the next small business leader of Fleming County. We have students who leave Fleming County High School, who may go to a tech school or may go to the military and come back and they're opening up businesses in Fleming County. That speaks volumes to what we're trying to do with durable skills and really this enterprising education throughout the district. But just being when we have business partners in our schools, it also adds value to them that we're listening to what they're telling us our direction that we need to be going with our durable skills. And if we weren't listening, they wouldn't be there. If we're just blindsided and we're tunnel vision that we're going to operate this way no matter what, they wouldn't be there. But you also see, we have 60 students, we have about 60 to 70 students per year who go into a paid work co-op experience, and that started out with 25. So money talks, right? Yes. And it especially talks to seniors. So when they see that, they start connecting the dots that, this is why we pound communication, we pound problem solving, we pound teamwork, we pound work ethic, and they finally get that. Now some kids, obviously we got to do a little bit more pounding on, but most of them, they pick it up, but I think it's just that visibility, that teamwork between the district and our business partners. I think that really helps.
Yeah, and durable skills, career pathways are so important. Students being able to understand those options, to be able to make those informed choices. Obviously, that has a profound effect on paths to a larger life and economic mobility, right? But the durable skills piece, again, that can be a powerful on-ramp to those options when we think about quality of life and well-being. So I'm glad you continue to reinforce that from the student perspective as well.
And I'll say one more thing. I told you a story out here. So I told JP this, we've got the best welding program in the state, right? I've got 14 banners to prove it. But when seniors, 19-year-old seniors, show up and show me their paycheck and it's $4,900 a week, don't you think that gets out to other students? Now everybody can't be a welder, right? But they come back and say, now we get why you're so focused on work ethic. They have to show up or they're not going to get paid, right? So they talk. 19 years old and they're making $4,900 a week. Just think about that.
So I think that, talking about value, kind of take a different lean on that, is showing value to the business community. And where I think I've seen a change in our area, and it's a regional approach, it's not just county by county. It's funny, my wife's not from Kentucky. She says, what's the deal with you guys? Go show what county you're from. I'm from St. Louis. I don't know what county I'm from. In Kentucky, we talk about counties, right? So that's a separate topic. But you have to take a regional approach, okay? And what I've seen in Western Kentucky is we've shown value to the business community and tech jobs, right? Traditional vo-tech jobs. Getting past that stigma for the parents, right?
Right.
So I don't think it was a master plan, but what worked out in Paducah and McCracken County and in Western Kentucky was we started a tech student of the week. So we had business communities come together and we would promote. They would be on the news at night, billboards, newspaper, and then we'd have a tech student of the month, and then we would give an award for a tech student of the year. So you were promoting that. So the parents left that stigma behind. At the same time you're doing that, the business community that was supporting that, we're now bought into the internships. And by the way, the day of the unpaid internship is over. Okay, that doesn't compute. If we're wanting to show these young people that there's worth in what they're gonna do, you can't ask them at 16 to come work for free. That doesn't work. So we're seeing that value, and we're seeing that, and it's working. It is absolutely working. And the value to the student, that having the opportunity to be around the people who can show them that check. So when they go to work in one of my shops, or they go out on one of my job sites, they're around people who are making $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year. They take a break with them, they eat lunch with them, they interface with them, and they realize, hey, you know, there's a career for this. So then they go back, they tell the story, and the wheel just keeps turning.
Yeah, that's great. And so we're going to transition in just a moment to our workshop session, but I want to give you all each an opportunity for some closing thoughts. And I guess the question I would have, and feel free to divert from this and you know, provide any last thoughts you may have, but I'm curious, what's one practical first step? So for businesses or service providers or intermediaries that are in the room today that aren't necessarily partnering currently, they have an interest in partnering. What's one practical first step that you would say is, here's something you really want to think about in terms of how do I get more engaged with my local school system?
I would say try to understand what level of engagement are you going to have, and can you sustain that within your organization? Are you going to have speakers in the classroom? Are you going to provide work-based learning opportunities? Like, what level of engagement works for you and your business that you can consistently be there? Because to me, we do have businesses that, you know, life happens, they'll call the last minute, they cancel a career shot, well, that's 15 kids I'm about to let down. You know, and so I've got to get it rescheduled quickly or get somebody else in there. And so it's making sure that you can sustain whatever it is you're signing up for, but get involved. If you haven't been to your school, especially your local high school, they're all doing amazing work and amazing pathways. We all tend to think of high school as the day we walked out, and it is nothing like that anymore. And so we constantly take businesses in just to see what the high school looks like today, given how much our community has invested in making sure those pathways have the latest and greatest. And they are teaching, because once you meet those instructors, there's no doubt in your mind that they're learning the things you need them to know. You just don't know them yet. And so just pick up the phone and call and ask if you can come see what's going on and see how you can help.
So for me, we don't work just in Kentucky. We work in 15 states a year, so it's not just, so I see this throughout the country, and most communities are getting this, right? I mean, most communities are understanding that this needs to be done. There's opportunities in the workforce, the durable skills. The story is the same. It's not just in Kentucky. Where I see a difference is if you have, all it takes is one or two people in your community to be committed to this. It may be someone at the chamber. It may be someone at the local Associated General Contractors. It may be whoever those people are. You have to empower them, stay engaged with them. Don't worry about taking credit, right? Let them do their thing. But I think the difference is having those one or two people in your community that's committed to be that liaison between the students and the opportunities.
That's a great point. I'll go back to education. Dr. Robbie Fletcher's the new commissioner. Man, are we lucky. He was a superintendent. He gets it. He's from our state. He understands what's going on in our schools and in our businesses and the opportunities. Our school superintendents are bought in to changing assessment and accountability and doing these things. So we are so fortunate. So anyone who wants to get involved, reach out to your superintendent. If not directly handling it, the superintendent themselves handling it, they'll point you to the person within the school that will. They love to have you come in. And that's a big difference. On the flip side, not only is the school not what it was when we all graduated, our businesses aren't either. The perception in the marketplace is that are especially industrial, that it's dirty and unsafe and all those kind of things. It's not. When manufacturing and things went overseas to low cost, probably about $10 an hour minimum, more than the folks that were doing the unskilled work. So getting out and seeing our manufacturers as well, anything we can do to connect, invite people in, and cross over those barriers is really good.
So out of 171 school districts, there are about 130 districts that have a portrait of a learner, portrait of a graduate. Out of that 130, there's probably 70 districts that require something like a senior defense, celebration of learning, defensive learning, TED Talks, or they may even call it senior exit interviews. Call and say, hey, I want to sit on that panel. And then you'll really see durable skills in action there. How the school district or the high school is really doing in terms of capturing, are the students going to be prepared to enter the workforce? But you'll really get to engage with the students that way. If you're saying, I don't want the responsibility of doing a work experience or come in and talk, I just want to watch and see what this is all about. Call your high school. Chances are they're doing some kind of one of those durable skill exit presentations. And it takes 20 minutes. Say, hey, I'll be here for 2 hours. You'll get to see 4 or 5 students come through there. But you probably end up spending the day because it's really interesting.
You will be blown away.
Yeah.
These kids are incredible, and it's quite the experience.
Yeah.
I would say from an employer perspective, if you're not engaged in K-12 education, you're desperately missing the boat. Because you can't, regardless of who you work for, you might think you have the biggest household name company out there, but you can't operate under the assumption that the students know who you are and what you do. In Bowling Green, Kentucky, we're known, it's the home of the Corvette. We're the home of what used to be Holley Carburetor, now the world's largest aftermarket performance parts company there is. But I can tell you, I can easily find students that have no idea what either one of those companies do, or the fact that they're in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Because right now, we have over 90 countries represented in our schools and over 100 languages spoken. And all of our communities are changing, and it's going to be ever changing. And so to be relevant as an employer, you need to be engaged. It is the largest sort of collective group of the future talent pipeline that there is. They're a captive audience, and they're hungry for the knowledge of who you are and what you do. And while you may think some of the things that you do aren't super cool, they do. And so engage and show them and become that employer of choice for them when they decide to make that choice later in life.
Well, thank you all so very much for sitting on this panel and really sharing your experiences at the local level, the state level, and the multi-state level. So I certainly appreciate it. And I know we're getting close to time, so I'm hoping after our workshop session we can maybe have some Q&A potentially, but I do want to make sure that we are engaging you all in terms of, we want to hear from you on, what are those criteria that we really need to be thinking about? What are the strategies that we need to be employing to make sure that those partnerships are effective? So we're gonna move into that session, but first, please help me thank all of our panelists here today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Todd Baldwin to lead us through the back end of our session here.
Well, thank you, and thank you again, panel. I appreciate the insights. It's been fantastic, some fantastic learning. I wanted to draw our attention to something that JP mentioned, champion, to get the ball moving. And we like to think about it in terms of groundswell action. So it only takes one person to start to get the ball rolling toward groundswell action. So for communities to come together to actually make a change. And here's something that we know. We recognize very clearly that it's going to require partnership, real partnership, to close the gap between our graduation rate and our actual work-ready rate, right? It's going to take real partnerships, and those partnerships need to be normal, and they need to be natural, and they need to be sustainable. So there's not one party that's going to be able to do it. We're going to have communities to come together. When we think about communities coming together to do this kind of work, I just want to draw your attention to the shifts. The 5 big shifts. This is our groundswell mobilization continuum. And so this is how we see communities move from inaction to collective action together in deep partnership. And so take a look at the shifts. And as we move into this next section, I want you to think about these shifts. What does it mean to do with those most impacted in this work? So what does it mean to increase local coordination? And you heard some of that. In particular, I thought it was very interesting how the leverage of a chamber becomes a force multiplier in the local community. And so what does that mean to increase local coordination? What is collaborative leadership around a shared goal? What does that look like in a community? And then intentionality for high impact. One of the things that I heard is, how do you sell this work? And it's really about ensuring that there's a value add to this work. And so being intentional about building in high impact. We're doing this for high impact. So, you have, our colleagues are going around the room now and they're handing out a few things. And we're going to do a couple of things in this part of the workshop. We're going to give you all an opportunity to kind of unpack your thinking and begin to identify what are some of those next steps, what are some of the actions that can be taken. But we're also going to borrow your collective genius and your perspective. We're going to borrow that because this is about also shaping the work moving forward.
We focused on the theme of structuring collaboration for the long term, and I'll just touch on one quickly. One of our questions was, what if every school had a business advisory council with real decision-making power? What should that council do? We talked about being responsible for oversight of what is going on in the school workforce partnership, and then seeking funding. So, and you don't have anything, that was just one of the areas. We covered several, but I'll just keep it brief.
Great, thank you, appreciate that, that's fantastic. In your community and how you can think about engaging in this work moving forward. And I'll close out with this. I'm going to invite Delaney to come up here because he's going to talk about how you can get engaged at a broader level. But I'll just close with this. I don't think that we can minimize the impact of one person starting that groundswell movement in that community. And we have to recognize that the system is perfectly designed to get the results that we're getting. So I'm going to say that one more time. The system is perfectly designed to get the results that we're getting. And so Delaney walked through, here are our results. Well, our system is designed to do that. And so we have to change the system, which means we need to change the relationship between schools and our business community. So Delaney's going to talk about how you can get engaged in an additional way.
Engage with us at Prichard, how we can support the efforts that you're already doing in your communities across the region, across the state. But there are a number of different opportunities that we're deeply involved in right now at a local level and at a state level that we invite you to get engaged with us in. And so if you are interested, we'd love for you to scan this QR code. Just a quick form about who you are, how you're interested in engaging with us through different partnership opportunities when we think about policy, state level policy systems, when we think about partnership frameworks, what do we need to be doing at a local level when it comes to bridging that gap between education and business. And so we really invite you and ask that if you're interested and you care about this work and really want to help build a meaningful high school diploma, please get involved with this. And so feel free to scan this QR code. I think it's also in your packet, so you can do that at any time. And then lastly, and then I'm going to hand it back over to the chamber, but we'd love for you to fill out I think there's 5 questions on feedback in terms of what was your biggest takeaway from this session today? What did you learn that you're going to take back to your community? What was most impactful that you might not have known before going through this session today? So we invite you to fill out this feedback survey.